Hello, everyone. It's a great sizzle to get going. So I'm Taylor Bloom. I'm back as your moderator for this panel. I'm very excited because we have just such a wealth of creative storytelling expertise up here. And of course, this panel is called A New Era of Content, Storytelling and Innovation. And so I'm going to try to do my best to get all five of these really talented folks to share and talk about what they're doing here and stimulate a good discussion. We're joined on the far end by Paul Rabil from the Premier Lacrosse League and many other exciting projects that he'll get into. And then Gabe Spitzer, VP of Nonfiction Sports at Netflix. Daniel Shichman, CEO and co-founder of WSC. And then Carrie Brzezinski-Hsu, SVP at ESPN's Creative Studio. And then we, of course, have Anthony Smith, VP and Head of Non-Scripted Development at SMAC Entertainment. So thank you very much to the five of you for coordinating, joining us. We had such a great conversation going backstage. I'd love to bring it upstage here. Paul, we'll start on the end, if you don't mind batting leadoff here, and just talk about top priorities for you right now. You have a lot going on, and we'd love for you to share with the audience.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. I would say that, I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome being on stage with people that I pitch pretty regularly on news shows and scripted and non-scripted opportunities. So it's been a great business development opportunity to be backstage to have these conversations. But the way I view storytelling in sports is, the connectivity comes through every medium. So if I were to list off slightly more than half a dozen, live sports at the top as a form of storytelling. It's gotten more and more valuable, as many people have seen, as Gabe knows too now with WWE, who was just up here. What you get in live sports, what makes it unique, is that it is a form of original programming that no one knows how it's going to end. It's also appointment watching television, and it's ad supported. Then you have film, television, documentaries, books, podcasts, video games, and new media, social media. So really, as a league, you have to be everywhere and then pick and choose where you want to get your creative team and extra resources invested. So we think about film. We have a film called Fate of a Sport that's out on Hulu and ESPN+. We're working on television projects and more documentaries. And then our day-to-day is sort of modern media.
Thanks, Paul. Gabe, from your perspective at Netflix, top priorities, projects you're working on right now?
The top priority at the moment is the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight, which is coming up in July, obviously. A big swing for us, and we're really excited about it. And obviously, seeing Nick and Paul up here on stage, WWE, an incredible opportunity and great partners coming up in January of next year with Raw in the US and other WWE programming around the world. But really our bread and butter still is the nonfiction documentary programming that we're doing, which for us has just been, it's great to see the momentum, slow build from even things back like Last Chance U in 2016, and then Drive to Survive, and more recently, shows like Quarterback or Untold. So it's trying to continue to push that storytelling, really dive into access and human stories. And for me specifically, it's just trying to keep an eye on that we're not just a U.S. platform, right? Even though I'm sitting here in L.A. and an American, like we are in 190 countries around the world, and there's so many incredible sports stories. So just trying not to lose sight of that and find those stories everywhere.
We'll definitely go into how you select some of those stories. Daniel, from the tech side, you're sitting on the generation, the creative side of the storytelling spectrum. What are top priorities for you in WSC right now?
So at WSC, we have an AI-powered platform that can automatically and in real time generate personalized and customized short-form content. So we work with more than 450 sports organizations worldwide, whether it's the NBA, the PGA, ESPN, CBS, PLL, etc. And I think the aim is to try to help them really connect with their fans, generate new revenue. And something that was discussed here on stage a few times in a few panels was just the way that fans consume content differently and how it affects the economy of sports. So it's not only about live sports anymore, because fans just look at sports differently on every platform, different length, different formats. So the real challenge, I think, for everyone here is to try to see how we can help sports organizations to really convert users from short-form content to drive them to subscribe to OTT, to build new formats that you can monetize, how to use that content to really collect data on the fans and then activate those fans and generate new revenue streams. So I think that's where the industry is evolving into, and we have to do it because that's what the fans are interested in, just watching everything on every platform, and we can't dictate just, okay, here's a 3-hour game, lean back and watch it. It doesn't work anymore, and that's what Paul said. You just need to see how you touch every fan in every touch point and make sure you get there.
Absolutely. Carrie, same question to you. Top priorities right now as you sit here?
Yeah, and just quickly before I get into the priorities, I'm part of the Creative Studio, which is the creative division at ESPN. It just helps to explain that as I get into how we're influencing the priorities. So we like to call ourselves the Avengers of Creatives because we're the animators, designers, producers, writers, musicians, editors that are really helping to add entertainment value, and what we like to say, take sports from game to experience. So like you just said, Paul, the game itself is the story, but how can we really, really enhance that, connect to pop culture, and even make it more sticky? So when we think about it through that lens, some of the big priorities for us is, number one, making the game feel more cinematic and immersive, right? Many of our kids and even many of us are playing games where we're attracted to a world that looks more photorealistic. We work with Epic and real-time Unreal Engine to not only make things look richer, but also be able to create things real time because sports is happening real time. So to be able to render something quickly. Number two is, and this is sort of the less sexier part of what we do, but as ESPN is creating more choice for fans, right? It's been talked about up here being more direct to consumer, whether it's integrating into Disney Plus or the new joint venture that you all like to call Spulu. I know a new name is coming. Is really now that content is in a lot of different places. So we need to be able to version all our matchups, all our games, everything we're doing with PLL. That has to come to life in an attractable way in all those areas. And then third, and this is what gets me really excited, is expanding audience. This is what matters to all of us, and doing it in a really different way. And I think for us, where we really landed this year is taking our league partners, adding the magic of Disney IP, and sprinkling technology on that to bring it to life. And an example of that, which I'd love to show, is Toy Story Fun Day Football, which we did with the NFL. I think it's queuing up.
Is it? It's queuing up. The anticipation.
Second down and 12 for the Jags. Trevor Lawrence evades the rush. You see the athleticism. He throws off his right foot. Touchdown! Jags! Calvin Ridley says Trevor Lawrence.
I mean, guys.
There is a lot of spandex going on. And if I stood up, America might change the channel, so I'm not going to stand up there.
What do you want to show us here?
Well, I want to show you the art of getting to the quarterback. There we go. Now Boog is in uniform. The 9 deuce is ready to go.
Biggest play of the first half so far. Ham wants to see it on replay. So does Rex. The pick 6 for the Jaguars.
Really good job there by Williams, stepping in front, taking it to the house.
We told you, as it happens in London, it happens here. Check out the side-by-side. What a cool look. In Andy's room and in London, Darius Williams. Last time in Toy Story, clearly still getting along well. As Travis Etienne makes the play, great camera angle from right behind the running back. As he gains 8 yards, he was chopped down by D. Alford, the Falcons' defensive back.
Yeah, that's a screen play. That's when the offensive lineman allowed the defensive lineman to come through.
That's pretty cool.
Love it. Thanks. Incredible. How many of you, or maybe your kids, caught any of the Toy Story NFL? Yeah, some hands. I mean, it's such a convergence of IP and creativity and storytelling, and it's live. I mean, it's such
Yeah,
really,
so
really
you were just asking me, like, what was the delay on that? There isn't one.
That's crazy.
I mean, the players are wearing chips real time.
Yeah. So Anthony, we'll round out the intro. Would love overview, intro. I mean, you work on so many unique projects. Give us the highlights.
Yeah, well,
here.
I mean, we just want to continue to do cool projects. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, that's our goal. We had a great year last year with BS High, with another season of Coach Prime. And we're just looking to do more of that this year, but also work with cool people. I think that's one of the things that's really cool about our industry is that, you know, we're building content around games. These are the things that we did when we were kids. So, you know, it's the cool athletes that you get to interact with and have the privilege of telling their stories, but it's also the cool storytellers behind the scenes. So continuing to work with new people, continuing to tell new stories. We have a nice slate of things that we're excited about this year. We have a documentary series on the history of the black quarterback that's going to be premiering on Amazon later this year that we're really excited about. We're doing a series on the history of the Madden video game, which we're really excited about as well. Another season of Coach Prime. He was feeling good last year. He's feeling even better this year, I can tell you. Having just spoken with him, we're kicking that off with our spring game next year. So we have a ton on the slate this year that we're really excited about.
Love that. Thank you for the questions coming in. Just a reminder, I got this iPad, and it's been great so far with questions, so thank you, everyone. Anthony, let's stick with you, and then also a question for the whole panel, but you said we just want to keep doing cool projects.
Yeah.
How do you identify cool? How do you decide what's worthy of your storytelling resources? You don't have more than 24 hours in a day like everyone else, so how do you approach your selection process for what stories to tell?
Well, look, I don't know if this is actually good or bad. I don't know if I'm doing the job correctly or not, but I mean, the way that we approach stories is it's not cynical at all. It's not looking to see what's selling. It's not looking to see what we think a buyer might want. With us, it starts with, is this a story that we would watch? Is this a story that we'd want to tell? And is this a story that we think is important to tell? And after we go through that internal process of just figuring out, okay, does this speak to us as someone first and foremost who would watch a story, not even the storytellers, but somebody who on a Saturday afternoon might turn this on and watch it. After we get past that point, then we talk with our reps at WME, and then we look at the market to see if it makes sense to take something out now, later, to develop further. But it always starts with just our inherent gut of, is this something that we think is cool? Is this something that we like? Is this an important story? Also with Michael and with Constance, who are our founders of SMAC and oversee SMAC. Michael, as all of us know, is a world-class Hall of Fame athlete. Constance, who started in the NFL and who manages everybody from Dion to Michael to Tony Gonzalez, DK Metcalf now, Common. Talent being so important to the fabric of the company. What's really important to us is giving talent the opportunity to tell the stories in their own voices, and letting them not only serve as EPs on projects that make sense, but also giving them input into the stories that we're telling. It's a talent first company. Talent is in our DNA, and giving them the opportunities to share stories that they're directly connected to, stories that they aren't. DK Metcalf, who we just signed a couple weeks ago, is very interested in things that have nothing to do with sports. So we want to give him the opportunity to tell those stories. And then, separate of that, something that's also important to us as a company is diversity. Whether it's black and brown storytellers, giving them the opportunity to tell stories, giving women the opportunity to tell stories, giving people from the LGBTQ community the opportunity to tell stories, people that traditionally don't have an opportunity to tell stories, especially in a space like sports, where there is so much diversity when you look at who's on the field, but oftentimes that doesn't reflect who's making the decisions, but also who's telling those stories. That's something that's also very important to the DNA and fabric of who we are. So.
And throwing this same question out to the panel, and as you look at the question through your own lenses, which are all complementary but different, how are you guys going through your own selection process about what to sink your resources and time into? And please feel free to chime in to anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that, we have an originals division. If Brian Lockhart was sitting here, he'd say something different as far as like what the lens is for our documentaries and so on. I'll speak from a live perspective. Again, it is about really augmenting that story. I always like to say sports are stories waiting to be told. And as they unfold, what is our job to further tell that story? So if you tune into ESPN, you're going to get a great matchup. You're going to get a state-of-the-art production. You're going to get incredible play calling, right? But we like to think about how can we really up the entertainment value. And when you think about what creative brings to the story, you might immediately think, okay, that full screen graphic. There's some information that needs to be told about the game that's happening at the moment, the player that made whatever play. But what example I love to give is, instead of just defaulting to that full screen in a big stage like Monday Night Football, we've really started to use animation and these Monday Night Football cartoons to tell the story differently. So a couple years ago, when the Niners had a ton of injuries on the bench, very different than this past season, we looked at sort of a pop culture moment, and one of our Hulu shows, Only Murders in the Building, was having a moment. So we looked at that and we said, what if we said only injuries in the building? And we took that opening sequence that you saw from the show, and instead of the characters in the window, you saw the players who were injured, which is a way more fun way of talking about it than sort of listing out some people thought that. A lot of Niners fans felt differently. But we knew that worked because it blew up on social media, and even Steve Martin retweeted it. So you just think about, sometimes it doesn't hit you over the head, but that's just a very different way of advancing the storyline within Monday Night Football.
I think if you look at it from a tech perspective and you look at all the opportunities that are now opening up with AI that has become cool now, and generative AI that really enables you to scale the content creation, the storytelling, and especially with the maturity, especially with text generation and audio generation, that you can now create any type of story. So I'll give you an example. So, we've been creating highlights for many years. It will publish, but sometimes our clients could take them. Someone would watch it, write the script for the voiceover, then send it to someone else to record the voiceover. So it will take 2 to 3 hours, and then you'll have a highlight with a voiceover of someone telling the story of the highlight. But right now, with these capabilities and the maturity of the technology, the highlight can be created. The script is automatically being created, being translated into 4, 5, 10 languages, and all of a sudden you have a highlight and you can right away get to every fan in the globe with different languages. And then you can say, piggybacking on what you said, why stop at languages? So let's create different styles. So let's take the highlight and create a style for kids. So obviously, simplified language, explaining about a game, but you can do it right away. And let's have another version for the sports geeks, which is more about the numbers. And let's make maybe a third one for teenagers, which will be more maybe humor and cynical. And all of a sudden, you have one raw piece of content, but you can create infinite amount of stories, and you can get to every fan. And once you get to them, that's the starting point. And then you can engage, then you can monetize, then you can attract them to do stuff. So I think the technology, as it matures, really enables to do things at really large scale. And I think we're just at the beginning of it. And you showed one example, and there are many of these. And I think we're going to start just things just evolving, especially in text and audio, which is really mature. And as we go forward, I think with the video as well.
Yeah, very exciting, Daniel. Yeah, Gabe, from a Netflix perspective,
yeah.
How are you going about selection?
For us, really, it's about the drama of the sport. I mean, just at Netflix in general, we pride ourselves on dramatic storytelling, be it Stranger Things or Squid Game or Love is Blind or Beckham, right? But I think, look, sports, there's inherently drama, and we want to lean into that as much as possible. And as we hear different pitches, the way the storytelling, it really does come down to sort of access and authenticity, and really making sure, look, you want to appeal to that core fan, but for us, the win is really how do you bring in the casual fan or the person who never knew they loved, Formula One or PGA Tour golf or things along those lines. So that's the ultimate win for us. And when we're approaching it in that way, it can't just be down the middle sports. You have to be telling that story behind the sports or off the field, and it's building that trust with whether it's a new league we're working with or a new athlete. I think that access and that vulnerability, I think, is going to win out at the end of the day. It can't just be all highs. You have to show, the lows with the highs, and I think that's what sports is all about, and that's what we're really striving for here.
Yeah. Well, I think I could probably approach this in a unique way, given that we don't have Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, David Beckham, Caitlin Clark in lacrosse. And
We've got you, though.
Yeah. Really.
thank you. Here's a little story. I sent Gabe an email over the holidays with a video that I felt like I framed it perfectly of my fireplace, because that's one of their most high. If you guys haven't seen Netflix Fireplace, it's just a phenomenal thing to run while you're having dinner parties and such. And I wanted to be the next director. He politely declined. So, look, stories. That is the most important thing. And so you look at your players, you look at the history of the game. We are a Native American game that was created thousands of years ago, that was once in the Olympics. It's back in the Olympics in LA 28. Morgan State, the 10 Bears, just outside of Baltimore City. They were a Division I lacrosse team in 1969. There are incredible stories in our sport. It's our job as storytellers to dig them up. And by the way, if you don't have the NFL, the NBA, or Major League Baseball, your stories can still prevail. Think about Cheer. Think about Last Chance U. Not many of us are talking about junior college basketball players, but the drama that Gabe was talking about is really important to get right. And then if you look at, I think, one of the best acquisitions over the last several decades in Disney acquiring Pixar, I study their art form of storytelling. Number one is story is king. Number two is establish a hook. So if you're creating short form on social, the first 2 seconds matter. If it's a television or a film, the first 2 minutes really matter. You gotta get right. You gotta have believable characters with real arcs. Conflict is the big narrative driver or drama. And you have to appeal to emotions, which I try to think about Jimmy Valvano. If you can experience a day where you smile, laugh, and cry, it's a full day. I think the same thing for film and television. And the last one, it's got to have a great ending. So if it's a show, you got to cliffhang well. And if it's a film, it's pretty straightforward. It's got to end well. I'm sure Larry David would argue. But I thought he got it right in Curb Your Enthusiasm. And David Chase maybe too, but I actually liked the ending of Sopranos.
Yeah. I love it. We have a great question to build on what you just said, Paul, about the history of lacrosse, and now it's in the Olympics. From a storytelling perspective, it says, Paul, how will you tell the story of international lacrosse participation and growth in the lead up to LA 28? You're in a unique position, really successful player, now with the league, and now you're kind of books and shows, and how are you trying to anchor all that, if at all, to LA 28 and the Olympic platform that your sport will be on?
Yeah, well, the Olympics are no question a goalpost for us that we're trying to send balls through. And so that's LA in 2028. So we have this 3.5-4 year ramp up where you can approach it from a storytelling standpoint. We can approach it from events. When I started playing lacrosse, there were 18 countries that were globally sanctioned. Now there are 91. We take both our pro men's and women's all-stars to Japan every year to compete against the Japanese national team. It's usually a 2 or 3 goal game. This is a big part of our continued strategy, is spreading the game not just domestically but internationally. We worked pretty closely with Casey Wasserman and his team over the last several years of thinking through the overarching narrative of lacrosse being native to North America, the first sport, and how it was once in the Olympics in 1904, 1908, now coming back. How do we revisit those origins? And there are several other things that we haven't announced yet that I probably shouldn't say now. But that when you get the Olympics, it's universally understood. Part of the challenge that I take on every day over the last 5 years since we launched the PLL is get people to understand it like they do synonymous with other disciplines, the pro game. People understand the Olympics. So it's really helped us in rooms of all shapes and sizes.
Anthony, to kind of build on this discussion, we have a couple questions here that I'm going to pull into one of the questions I had, and it's really for all of you, but new trends you're seeing and demand for stories from fans. Paul mentioned like the 2 seconds on social, 2 minutes in movie, like get it right really quickly, basically, and get that hook. Is there any changes in your worlds that you've done recently with any of the shows or the docs or anything that you've just had to adjust to because fans are looking for that?
Well, I mean, Gabe mentioned this, a few minutes ago, having access. and showing athletes, specifically athletes, since this is SBJ and we're talking about sports, but showing athletes as human beings. I mean, that's one of the things that the Olympics has done great for so many years. They're human interest stories. You know, it's a runner from Kenya, it's a gymnast from Russia who, you know, they have these amazing stories and you're learning about them, but having the access and being able to go behind the curtain and see athletes at home, see them in their insecurities, see them in their frustrations, see them after a big win, see them after a horrible loss. That's something that we're digging more and more into. But also one of the things that we've had success with, and again, it just kind of goes back to the DNA of who we are as a company, is having peers talk to peers and kind of taking the journalist, kind of taking the documentarian, you know, out of it. You know, one of the great things about this project that we're doing with quarterbacks, it's quarterbacks talking to one another. You know, it's not a documentarian asking, you know, Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or Cam Newton a question. It's Michael Vick, you know, somebody that a lot of these guys grew up idolizing, and the stories that they're sharing with him are things that I don't care how great a documentarian you are, you're not going to be able to get these stories. Hearing Steve Young talk with Michael about a secret trip that he took to Atlanta, that Steve took to Atlanta in 2001 after Michael was drafted, and hearing about their friendship 20 years since then is something that you can do all the research in the world, you're just never going to know. So we've done a lot of the projects that we're doing now kind of have some of that peer-to-peer, I guess DNA in the project, where we're just able to just hear stories that you know, as a fly on the wall that you want to hear. They're things that you want to hear, which also speaks to access. You know, just having the access to athletes. There's just things in moments where they're going to forget the cameras are on and they're just going to be real. And that's where the magic happens. That's really what you want to see.
To broaden that to the panel and to focus on the title of this talk, storytelling and innovation, as a moderator, I want to try to like pierce through that buzzword of innovation. Like, how do you guys innovate when you tell stories? Like, what does that mean to you? Obviously, the video, that's fantastic. The convergence of IP and being in Andy's room, and there's a Jaguars game there. Like, that is a lot of things coming together. That's very innovative. What was that process like for you guys? I'd be curious to hear. And then in general, from the other panelists, how are you trying to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to producing great new content? So, Carrie, maybe we'll start with you on that innovation process.
I think with any innovation, there's a lot of magic and a lot of moments that have to come together to make it happen. But I think really leaning into the Disney IP and the technology and being somewhat fearless about that mattered. But the driving force was, and that like really the story behind it is, since Jimmy Pitaro came to the company, his first priority was to expand audience. And we like, what does that really mean, right? What does that really mean? And what do we have in our own house to make that real? Let's stop talking about it, let's do something. And so I'm looking at David Spargrove, who leads our animation team. It was really David and team that said, look, if we want to really do this right, we got to go to Pixar. And even though Pixar is part of our company, they're intimidating to all of us, right? Paul just talked about their story's fine. Like, we're learning from them every day. How dare we, right? And they are focusing on 2.5-year lead times to tell movies. And we're like, hey, we want to do this one game, you know? So, but David put such a compelling pitch together and showed how using their characters to explain what a first down is, to use Slinky Dog, right, along the sidelines. I mean, I think were just like, oh yeah, this makes sense. And then we built a trust there, and then it was getting the right technology. So now we've got like the right partner, the right look, like we know this is gonna bring people in. But if we go live and that is at all wonky and people are like, you can't really watch the authenticity of the game, then it's not, all of a sudden that innovation all goes down the tube. So the technology and being able to have the Hawkeye system, reading the chip that was in the pads of every player, you know, being able to track limb movement and do that real time so that the game action was authentic, in addition to the story we told around it with the characters, really, really mattered. So none of that gets done without I think really strong IP, really strong intentionality behind the story, and then all the right technology partners. And our biz dev and innovation group that Kevin Lopes and Mark Walker lead, they're constantly bringing us those partners so we can match the idea with the right technology partner, like working with you all.
Speaking of, thank you for the segue.
Yeah.
From a WSC perspective, what are you guys doing to react to what I think you said over 400 plus partners around the world you guys work with that use your tech to generate highlights, clips, et cetera. How are you innovating there and staying ahead of the curve?
So first, I agree. I think the main thing for everyone is to expand the audience. And the audience, you can do it. You need to get to every platform that they're on, and you tell a different story on every platform, whether it's very short form on Instagram, whether we'll see what happens in Apple Vision. We'll see, like all the platforms, they need to make sure you tell the right story. And at the end of the day, we can tell the best stories and documentaries and everything. The game needs to be really good. The action in the game needs to be really good. They need to be able to tell, for every fan, the interesting angle. And on top of that, you can go and do it in various ways. So it can be a general highlight. It can be something that you can overlay on top of it for kids. Or it can be something in the future, and again, we're seeing it coming, and I'm sure that everyone has seen OpenAI with Sora and how you can go and generate new video just from text. So imagine you can now go, and we're in LA, so you can go and say, hey, I want to see a buzzer beater, a game winner by LeBron James, dribbling twice to the corner, fading away versus the Jazz, which is my team, and winning the game. And all of a sudden, you get a play that never happened, but it was actually generated and looks real. Mm-hmm. Now the question is, on one end, it can be a threat for the sports industry, because if you can generate anything, what does it mean to own rights? But on the other end, it can open up a whole new experience for everyone. Mm-hmm. How can fantasy look like if I can now create a game of both of us? How can betting look like? How can content for kids look like? So I think there are we're just on the verge of amazing storytelling opportunities that can happen with new technologies. And I think that's going to, like you said, expand the audience. That's exactly that, and it's going to happen.
Hey, that's funny. I was listening to you. I was like, wait, did LeBron James do that?
Not versus the Jazz.
I was like, I don't know if he did that one.
I think for us, though, I mean, it's really remembering how global sports are, and that content now is borderless, right? It's not just U.S. fans watching U.S. athletes. You know, for us, it's seeing, you know, Drive to Survive, which was a growing sport here in the U.S., you know, take off, obviously in partnership with the live rights that ESPN had, but with that coming out and creating new fans. And I think innovation for us is seeing, you know, we're dubbing every piece of content in dozens of languages. We're subtitling it in 30 plus languages. So now I think it's just fans from anywhere can access new stories, and it's just remembering that, which just feels like, you know, it's a new era for this type of storytelling. Mm-hmm.
So I would say a couple of things. I think what ESPN did with Pixar and what Carrie showed us is fantastic, and that feels like innovation to me. When I think about innovation as storytelling, it's marketing and distribution. Marketing example, you know, Warner spent $150 million on Barbie's marketing budget, but that's not too different from major motion picture budgets, but they crushed the marketing of that film, which drove viewership. Distribution, if you look at late night television or even Saturday Night Live, they're building a lot of skits for YouTube to try to get an extension and access new audiences. So I think that's innovation. When it comes to storytelling, though, I believe that the best stories are timeless, and they're no different than the best musicians in history or best artists. And when I think about the impact of timeless film in sport, I'm sure we could all get into a huddle and talk about what resonates with us, from Rocky to Rudy to Field of Dreams. I think the Mighty Ducks helped the NHL more than anything else in the 90s. You know, even to books where Friday Night Lights was a screenplay adaptation, you know, Boys in the Boat, all that stuff. So storytelling, be clear that the essence. You know, I watch sports movies and I watch international art house. Like, so it's a weird juxtaposition, but I want to feel something when I watch.
Get you all out of here on this. You, for the most part, have creative or producer in your titles, and that's your day job. What do you do to stay creative when you're not actually doing your day job and you're trying to unplug? Who wants to be brave and bat lead off for that question? If not, I'll call on one of you, but I'd be curious.
I hang out with my kids, man.
Yeah?
That was exciting.
I hang out with my kids. I have a 17-year-old that's about to go to college.
Do you watch shows with them or
We watch a lot of Netflix. We
Okay.
watch a lot of sports. Read.
Yeah.
But yeah, just hang out with my kids when I can on the weekends and
Yeah.
when they're home from school.
I observe my 4-year-old, and he goes to the Disney daycare, so you can imagine the antics. But, and honestly, what keeps me up at night is he is driving me to think about how to get him interested in sports the way he is into like Marvel and Disney and Star Wars. And I'm watching him and asking him a lot of questions and testing things. He did watch more than a quarter of that game, so I'm proud to say that. It caught attention, but it is really understanding the human behavior at that little age that is inspiring a lot of our creativity.
Daniel, stay creative.
Yeah, I'm gonna be corny, but there's no out of work. Like I feel that like what we're doing it's at least my passion, and just keep learning, keep seeing what's going on, talking to the industry, seeing how we can be part of real transformation and help evolve sports, and especially as a sports fan. So for me, just keep talking, reading, seeing, and thinking about it. So,
Gabe?
Yeah, I mean, similar. I have an 8 and 6-year-old, so it's a lot of Legos and sort of observing what they're watching. They're into game shows. They're dabbling in sports now. But for me, yeah, I think to stay creative, almost you have to just like tune out and unwind and keep your mind open, because I think that's when the best ideas come in. So that for me is hanging out with my kids and yeah, unwinding.
Paul, tell me you go like just throw lacrosse balls at something and unwind.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's really about unlocking our youngest selves. That's where we spawn the most creativity. And when life hits us in the face as we get older, we get less creative, more left side brained. So I had retired a few years ago. Picking up a lacrosse stick and shooting is me continuing to build a relationship with my younger, more imaginative self. And it sounds similar when you're spending time with kids. They're younger versions of you. And I think that is, a creative act alone. The other thing is staying interested. I study great filmmakers. I think film is a director's medium. I agree with everything that Anthony was saying about athletes and empowering their voices, but you've got to have great showrunners. And I mentioned, sort of international films. And I can give you guys recommendations afterward, but trying to figure out
That's great.
how they're shooting, on what budget, how long's the script, how it's coming to life is pure art.
Very well said. Thank you so much to our 5 wonderful panelists. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Taylor.
Absolutely. Yeah.